Welcome back, everyone. Phoenix 3 here. And of course, you all knew I was going to do this. I can easily take the Angry Joe route here and say they done fucked it up. And I'm probably going to say they done fucked it up. But I was really hoping that deep down inside that they wasn't going to make this an action RPG. So today I got to see some actual gameplay footage for the game, just a couple of seconds. It blew up my inbox feed, so I was like, you know what? I need to go ahead and make a video about this since I do love Final Fantasy, but I really do have some different love for Final Fantasy 7 because it was my first 3D Final Fantasy game, and I've played all of them all the way up to what it is now, and I don't like it. I was really hoping that they would have kept either the ATB or they would have went with the Final Fantasy X's version ATB, which would have looked really nice with these graphics. Because the whole thing that kept going through my head is like, man, we're gonna fight that big ass scorpion tank at the beginning in like a battle system related to Final Fantasy X, and they actually showed it. So I was like, yes, we get to fight this again. It's the original Final Fantasy game. But then we see the battle system, which was what I was really hoping they would show, and I was really hoping it was going to be turn based, and it wasn't. It, it's Kingdom Hearts. That's all I can say about it. It's not as goofy as Kingdom Hearts, but this is generally just the way all of their battle systems turned out. I wouldn't even mind the battle system be something related to what it was in was it Final Fantasy 12, the one with lightning in it. That would have been okay in my books. I would have much rather preferred Final Fantasy X's battle system, or if they wanted to keep it just like the original, let ATB be in there. Um, that's pretty much the only bad thing that I think I want to say on this. Like a lot of people had the concern they didn't want their characters to be AI controlled because that was the point of Final Fantasy VII was you had all of these characters that you could get that you could level up and stuff. Like you had to look for Yuffie, deal with her shenanigans. You could get Vincent. There were a lot of characters that you didn't have to finish the game that you could get that just aided your experience. But when you have a battle system like this, it's like, why would I care to get Yuffie if I can't control her on the team and she's just going to be AI controlled the entire time? The way the trailer makes it look is that you can control the other characters because there was a part where Barrett was also being controlled. I don't know if it's going to be a thing where you switch between the characters and you kind of play them in the battle like that, or if it actually is turn based but it's more active, like you control Cloud for his turn, you do his select number of moves, then it goes to the next character, you do their select number of moves. Like if it's like that, I wouldn't say it'd be better because I wouldn't know how a system like that would be played because I haven't played one like that. I mean, there's similar ones, but I haven't played one exactly like that, so I don't know how that would be. But the one thing that I do want to point out is that this here is, in fact, a remake of Final Fantasy VII. It's not a remaster. It's not going to be the exact same game, just with scaled up graphics or anything like that. It is, for the most part, the same game, but it's a remake. And of course, with a remake, we also have to accept that things are going to change. You know, the gaming industry was a whole lot different than it was back then. A lot of game concepts were still new and developing, and they have a system now where they could make any RPG that they want and make it good or at least decent. So we can expect some changes as fans from this remake, and I already knew in the back of my head that if there were going to be any changes in the Final Fantasy VII remake, that it'll probably be something related to the battle system. I already had in the back of my mind that, if it is a system where your characters are AI controlled, that I really wouldn't have that much a problem with it. It's like, yeah, it's still kind of a problem because all of us who grew up who really wanted this wanted an HD version of Final Fantasy VII. Remake the game with PlayStation 3 graphics was our thought at the time, and now it's on the PlayStation 4, so it's like remake the game with PlayStation 4 graphics, and then it goes from there. But another thing that I did want to say is this just proves that Japanese game developers are out of touch with, you know, the community, or at least uh, every other part of the world. And this here is a problem that I've seen in a lot of games where we expect them to make the game one way because why else would they make it any other way when every other version of the game has been this way? And then we get the remake and it's something completely different. Now, they're not out of touch with their own country, for example. Like, they love Kingdom Hearts. And I believe Kingdom Hearts was like the beta test for a game engine like this. Like, how could we make an RPG? And they loved it. They ate it up. So all the newer Final Fantasy games started going into a battle system like that, which is one that they loved. So of course that was kind of going to bleed over into a Final Fantasy VII remake. I was just hoping it didn't, because it's not a system that I personally care for, but I can work with that system. I just feel this battle system here takes away the personal relationships or personal feelings that you have for the characters because you're able to control every character at the same time. You do something with Cloud, another character comes in, you do their thing. But here, the focus is squarely going to be on Cloud with the characters in the background doing what they do. Or maybe it's not even going to be on Cloud because you could possibly play any other character you want for the duration of the game. And then, Cloud will be in the background and you just focus on whatever character that you want. But I was actually really hoping that this wasn't the case, but I think in the back of our heads or the back of our minds, we all knew that was gonna happen. This here just has or gives me some other things to kind of think about, like what else are they going to change just to make it more modern? And that's basically what's happening here is they just modernize Final Fantasy VII, which isn't a big deal. I actually like the way the game looks right now. I just want to see the way it feels. So hopefully they can release a demo for it. That'd be pretty good because I really want to see if anything else is going to change. Like I really want to find out if some of the other more goofy stuff is going to be in the game. Like this game has to have the cross-dressing Cloud. That has to be in here. The game has to have the motorcycle chase. That has to be in here. The game has to have the flying saucer. All of this stuff has to be in there because this was what made Final Fantasy VII what it was. It wasn't too serious, but it expected you to take it serious. And a lot of the times it was goofy until the Sephiroth part came into the game and it just flipped everything on its head. And that's going to be another thing, the final Sephiroth fight. Like, we had to fight giant angel thing, Sephiroth. I don't know how to, like, explain that. We had to fight that in RPG mode. So this fundamentally changes the way a lot of the boss fights are going to be because we might not even have a lot of the same bosses anymore. We might not have, there's a lot of stuff that changed. Like, I'm gonna use this as an example. In the first part of the game, when you're running through the slums, you could fight a random house enemy. Like, how do you put that in this game when you're fundamentally changing the way the game is going to be played? So we have to expect things like new enemy types. We have to expect new bosses. Um, is the world map going to be a thing? Are we going to be able to run through a mini map? Are we going to be able to fly the Highlander? I believe that's what it's called. Like, are we going to be able to do all of these things that we've been able to do in Final Fantasy VII? So I think as fans, we fucked up, but we just don't realize it. Like, I think this is the reason why they said you may like it or you may hate it. Is because they knew, as being developers of a game, that they're not going to be able to put in all of this stuff. Because when you have a game with lesser graphics, you can by default not take the game as seriously as you want. There's always going to be something more goofy in the game just because of the resolution of the graphics. But when we start getting into HD stuff, it's like, okay, how can we make a house fight in a full free range mode of a game? Like, how can we do that? How can we have the grass enemies come out and fight you? What about the mini game that they had, the tower defense mini game, where you had to get the guy Gil to pay for certain troops to defend against enemies that came in? Like, how would they do that? Because we have to take it from this lower scale here to put it into a higher resolution scale, and it just fundamentally changes everything that we knew about the game. So the developers already knew that they weren't going to be able to do it. That's why they kept saying, well, we don't have any plans on remaking a Final Fantasy VII game. But they listened to the fans and they're like, okay, we're going to give you what you want. And if we fuck it up, it's going to be your fault that we fucked it up. Because you, as fans, don't know what it's going to take to make a remake. Like, when we play the Pokemon games, for those of you that still play Pokemon, because you guys already know I still play Pokemon. This is a Pokemon channel. But when I played Red and Blue for the first time, it was good. I haven't played anything like it. But then, many years later, we got Fire Red, Leaf Green as remakes. And it fundamentally changed the game. The addition of special defense, for example, and abilities completely made it a completely different game. But nobody complained about it. It added content to the game. I'm pretty sure it even removed content, but nobody complained about it. If you were to go back to play Pokemon Red, Blue, or Yellow thinking it's going to be like the newer games, then you're going to be severely disappointed because you're not going to have that same level of depth. As a matter of fact, it's going to be completely two different games just because the systems in the games are completely different. What you were able to do in one, you weren't able to do in another. That's just because of the evolution of the engine. The mechanics of the game changed. And as a huge fan of Final Fantasy VII, at the time, I didn't know what work went into a game. I just wanted to remake a Final Fantasy VII. I didn't care what it was. I was like, I want this with better graphics. But you simply can't have that with better graphics because, let's be real, if you take your nostalgia glasses off, Final Fantasy VII had a lot of things wrong with it. A lot of things wrong with it. And as a Final Fantasy VII fan at the time, I didn't want to admit that because this year was the best thing ever. If you didn't like Final Fantasy VII, you were my enemy. But we can't think of games like that anymore. There are a lot of games that I would love to see remade, but at the same time, I also know that there is a strong possibility that it's not going to be the same game. Why? Because gaming consoles are a lot more powerful now. They can do a whole lot more. There can be more things on screen. There can be more everything. So in Final Fantasy VII, if you were to fight that Scorpion tank with the tail laser, what's to say that this version of this game won't have you fight five of them at the same time? The PlayStation 4 is capable of more, so we should expect more for the game, and we should want the developers to put more in the game. We all have our own vision. But at the end of the day, I already played Final Fantasy VII several times. So would I be more likely to play through the exact same game again? Probably not. If there were some changes in there, then yeah, I would love to play those changes. But we also have to keep in mind that there is also a strong possibility that a lot of the stuff we wanted or that we did in Final Fantasy VII for the PlayStation isn't going to be in this game, and that's simply just because with the new engine, it just won't look right. And this here is something else that I wanted to touch on about in another video, but I think I'll say it here. Like, we have this thing in animation called the suspension of disbelief, and I don't know if you've ever watched an animation where a series of frames came up and it just looked odd. And it's like, well, that's not realistic. That doesn't look good. It doesn't move like that. That's because the animators didn't do a good job of keeping you suspended. They they failed at that, and you noticed it, and it pulled you out of the story because you're like, okay, that's not realistic. But the thing is a good animator can show you a large amount of unrealistic things as long as it looks good, and you won't say anything about it. And this here is true for older game remakes on more powerful consoles. Is that maybe it's not the best idea to have a house enemy comes out that fights you in a game that's trying to take itself seriously now, because this game is going to take itself seriously. That pulls you out. It's like, okay, that's goofy as fuck. Why is that there? And you'll say something like that. Whereas opposed, you didn't care in the original Final Fantasy VII game because the graphics, it was turn-based. They could throw anything at you. But when you fight the boss that you're going to have to fight in this game, maybe that was just a wall that just dropped stalactites that just did that for his attacks. In an HD game, how does that look? I mean, it doesn't look that good. So they would remove it. So they're removing content simply because of the fact that it'll start to reach that uncanny valley type deal. But I just want to know what you guys think as fans. As fans of Final Fantasy VII, did we fuck up? Did we not know what we want at the time? And now that we're getting it and we see the changes that they're implementing, do you put the developers at fault for that? Or do you put the fans at fault for that? And I will straight up say that the fans are part of the problem because we know what we want in this game and we want the developers to give us that to please us. But at the same time, the developers know if they did give that to us, it could possibly ruin the game, even though all of this stuff was in the original game. But that's just my thoughts on this new trailer that they had just released. But I want to know what you guys think. In the comments below, just let me know if you like it, if you don't like it, and why. You know, Maybe the developers will see this and they'll be like, maybe we should go back to ATB. Maybe we could change the course of development of this game for the better or for the worse. They even said it themselves, pretty much in a nutshell. We could fuck this up or it could be the best game ever. So, if you guys like this video, then please subscribe to my channel. If you are going to subscribe purely just for Final Fantasy, then that may be an issue since this is a Pokemon channel. I'm going to be doing Pokemon more. This is same thing to all the Call of Duty people that might be watching my videos. If you're going to subscribe, then subscribe doing so that you know that this is a Pokemon channel. But I would love to have you either way. Be sure to like this video if you like it and share it. You know, this game here is a community effort. We all have things that we want to see in this game, all things that we don't want to see. We all have a voice. Let's let's hear them. And as always, I want to thank you guys for watching my videos, and I hope to see you all in the next one.